Consumerism in East Germany, Goodbye Lenin and the Lives of Others. European cinema is cited in a real historical context. Specifically, throughout this presentation, I will discuss the European films Goodbye Lenin and the Lives of Others in relation to the history of consumerism throughout East Germany. Hillman discusses the way in which Goodbye Lenin approaches the telling of real history and the history that might have been, and how this allows us to take a deeper look at the history of the GDR and all its complexities. Following a breakdown of Goodbye Lenin's conflicting historical tales, Hillman concludes that film in general, and this film in particular, are capable of a suggestiveness that is not a postmodern capitulation before history, but rather bears an ambiguity capable of conveying some of history's complexities. Using this idea, I will discuss how Goodbye Lenin and the Lives of Others are situated in a historical context as they display the East German material fantasies before the fall of the wall, the neo-colonial nature of Western consumerism after the fall, and the Ostalgie that followed. The roots of economic failure in East Germany. To understand the history of East German material fantasies under socialism and the neo-colonial nature of Western consumerism after the fall of the wall, we must first examine the period before and after the war in East and West Germany to gain a better understanding of the shocks happening in both economies. In the years following the war, major discrepancies developed between East and West Germany. Under Soviet occupation, the East experienced numerous phases of massive dismantling, while in the West it was much less severe. Thus, compared to its wartime peak, East Germany experienced a drastic decline in capital stock. In regard to the labor force before the war, industrial employment in the East and West was on the rise. In the early war years, even as migration grew, it was offset by importations of forced labor that essentially turned Germany into a slaveholder economy. After the war, when the remaining slave labor force left Germany, that outmigration was again countered by Germans returning from war. The Nazi four-year plan was an industrial output success before and during the war. However, as bombing increased and the Allies invaded, the German economy collapsed in 1945. As the Allies took over, the German output and thus the economy suffered as establishments were shut down and only reopened under strict supervision. During this period, East Germany saw mass amounts of unemployment. Even those who were employed often were not productive, as they spent much of their day lining up for rations or bartering to ensure their survival. Soviet occupation in East Germany slowly reorganized in the post-war years, while the West saw a remarkable expansion of their industrial workforce in the late 40s. Ritschl and Vanyo mention that by 1950 it was evident that East Germany had fallen behind. Labor productivity reached only 70% of the West German level and kept sliding further. In addition, the East began to face certain input-output bottlenecks due to its industrial structure, because essential raw materials were mainly produced and controlled by the West. As the East made attempts at expanding its industrial capacity, the problem intensified and imbalances between the East and West continued to grow. In addition, East Germany lacked sufficient transportation to import vital materials. This was the result of the socialist agenda, which in the recovery stage prioritized material production over developing transportation. This priority was in part derived from the fact that East Germany would have had to import materials from the West to improve their transportation sector. Compared to the trade relationship preceding World War II, the East and West trade following the war was insignificant and declined even further as the Cold War intensified and West Germany reintegrated into global markets. Without sufficient access to imported raw materials and intermediates, East German industry could not realize the productive potential determined by its available production capacities. The resulting harsh conditions provoked many companies to move from the East to the West. The loss of thousands of organizations weakened the East while strengthening the West, as industries lost competitiveness and very few skilled people remained to work or train apprentices. The fact that many of those who fled were young adults only served to worsen the problem, as the death rate began to overtake the birth rate in the East. So long as East Germany remained closed to foreign trade, its industrial and thus economic growth was very limited. Overall, the economic success of West Germany over East Germany was caused by the division of Germany's political and economic institutions industrial bottlenecks, and paralyzing post-war reparations. Material fantasies. Goodbye Lenin and the Lives of Others are both set in a historical context because they display the East German material fantasies before the fall of the wall. Soviet-led East Germany was built on a shared denial of the past, as well as promises of future prosperity and solidarity for all. In this way, Venus explains how the combination of a state-sanctioned collective amnesia and a rigorous reinterpretation of real memories had been very effective for achieving a constrained loyalty to the state. However, this loyalty began to falter as it became clear that the East German state was failing to deliver material promises, and the idea of a utopian society appeared further and further away. We see historical representations of this poor consumer situation throughout the movies Goodbye Lenin and the Lives of Others. In Goodbye Lenin, we see material fantasies best displayed by Ariane Kerner. Immediately after the fall of the wall, we see the most changes in Ariane's life. As she changes her clothes, career, and even begins dating a man from the West, it becomes clear how unsatisfied she once was under the socialist regime. Alternatively, in the Lives of Others, we see the disparity of East Germany from the point of view of successful artists. Despite Draymond's achievements, his clothing is very limited. When he receives a tie as a birthday gift, it is beheld with great value, and it becomes clear that such luxuries are very limited in the East. The way in which these films display the deep longing for West Germany's material abundance, while simultaneously having characters that believe in the socialist promise, makes it apparent that fantasy, much like ideology, can be used to establish a political hegemony by promising mythical or imaginary resolutions to social tensions and contradictions. Venus, material fantasies. Thereby, the yearning for a better life shown throughout Goodbye Lenin and the Lives of Others expresses how many East Germans clung to such dreams in an attempt to erase East Germany's lack of harmonious qualities. In conclusion, Goodbye Lenin and the Lives of Others are situated in a historical context because they display the East German material fantasies before the fall of the wall, the neo-colonial nature of Western consumerism after the fall, and the nostalgia that followed. Overall, it is apparent that these films successfully depict how East Germans' longing for material goods came from a deep need for unity, but served only as a distraction from the poor living conditions, provided that, once the wall had fallen, the people of East Germany began to realize what they once thought would bring them freedom had its own form of control over their lives. With this loss came the longing for certain aspects of their socialist past back. It is these real historical ideas that the films Goodbye Lenin and the Lives of Others illustrate so well. Thank you for listening and have a great summer.